Hi everyone, this is Leonard Smith from Sense Memory, and today I'm going to talk about a fragrance I've been wanting to talk about for a very long time, and a few people have been asking for a review also, so stay tuned.
Oh, the good life, full of fun, seems to be the ideal. Yes, the good life lets you hide all the sadness you feel. You won't really fall in love, for you can't take the chance. So be honest with yourself. Don't try to fake romance. It's the good life to be free and explore the unknown. Like the heartaches when you learn you must face them alone. Please remember, I still love you, and in case you wonder why, well, just wake up, kiss the good life, kiss it goodbye.
Was created in 1975, and it was the second fragrance I ever bought in my whole life. My very first fragrance was, and this is a bottle that I've had since my 20s, and it was Chanel for Men, which morphed into, or was simply renamed, Pour Monsieur. That was my first fragrance. My third fragrance was this beauty by Van Cleef & Arpels, Van Cleef & Arpels Pour Homme, which is a lovely fragrance. But my second fragrance, the fragrance that I took a chance on after wearing my signature scent for about five years, I guess it was this beauty, Gray Flannel by Geoffrey Beene. Now, this has an interesting history in the fragrance community. It, for a time, was reviled as simply awful. And when I heard those reviews, I went back and bought a bottle of the current edition, and this is it. And I wanted to see if in fact it was not what it used to be. So I was not disappointed. It is what it used to be. There may have been reformulations, but to me, this smells as beautiful as it always did. So let's take a little exploration here with this fragrance that I consider to be a classic men's fragrance that evokes New York, Boston, Philadelphia, all the great eastern cities in the fall in the 60s and 70s when gentlemen were gentlemen, and it was a wonderful time. The fragrance was created in 1975 for Geoffrey Beene by Andre Fromatin, and this is the only fragrance I could find in my research that he ever created. But if you're going to only make one, why not make a really fantastic classic? A little bit about Geoffrey Beene. He started out, he was going to school in college to be a doctor and decided, now this is really a switch from a doctor, he decided he wanted to be a fashion designer. He became a fashion designer, opened his own, he worked in Paris, New York for a while, and then when he felt he was ready, he opened his own studio, his own house, and that was on 7th Avenue which in those days was the garment district. And he's considered one of the great American designers of the period. And he designed for such people as Nancy Reagan, Faye Dunaway, just a list of luminaries of the period. And I was reading about him, and one person said that always at his fashion shows, women would burst into tears because they thought his designs were so beautiful. Anyway, this was the first of 2 fragrances he created for men. The second one was Bowling Green. But this fragrance, Gray Flannel, the top notes are galbanum, neroli, petitgrain, bergamot, and lemon. The mid notes are violet, iris, geranium, mimosa, sage, narcissus, and rose. And the base notes are oak moss, vetiver, cedar, tonka bean, and almond. So it's packed full of notes, which is typical of fragrances of the mid to late 70s for men and into the 80s. So let's spray it and see what we think. I know what I think, but I'm going to share this with you. So the sprayer is beautiful. The bottle is classic. I mean, this just looks great sitting on your dresser. But the opening notes are the citruses, of course. Petitgrain, bergamot, lemon, it's all there. But there's a splash, no, I would say a brush stroke of galbanum going across it, which is really, really lovely. The mid notes, as I said, are violet, iris, and I have some here on my arm. Now this is where the florals come in after you've had it on for about 20 minutes. Violet, iris, geranium, narcissus, and rose. The rose is very subtle. I have trouble with rose, but it's just the right touch of rose that just blends beautifully with the violet and that earthiness of the iris, and it's grounded by the geranium. And a little bit of white there, a little bit of white with the mimosa. Now the dry down is where it really expands and becomes almost cinematic in its beauty. And that's where you have the oak moss and the vetiver just swirling around and as almost like a cauldron of deliciousness. It's really beautiful. And then there's a little bit of the vanilla tonka bean that just bounces off that almond and the cedar and makes it also woody and earthy. It really is spectacular. It's a classic. Now, in some of the other reviews I've seen, people have said, well, this is for someone 30 and up. But, you know, I was 25 when I first wore it. And in those days, we weren't afraid of grown-up fragrances. Like I said, with the Chanel for Men or Pour Monsieur, I wore this at 21. And it's a pretty mature, sophisticated scent. So definitely, if you're a young man, or a middle-aged man, or an old man who wants to wear something classic that will give you a sense, an air of sophistication and elegance, this is definitely a fragrance that I think you'll enjoy. So there you have my take on the controversial Geoffrey Beene Gray Flannel, and it's definitely something I would recommend. And remember, wear what you love, not what they say you should like. Cheers.